Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Spencer TCG here. Today we are going to do the first video in a series of draft guides for certain leaders of the new set, Shadows of the Galaxy. I'm not going to do all of the leaders, but I'm going to highlight on just a few. And today we are going to start with Rey. So here we go. So Rey is a blue-white leader with the action ability to pay 1, give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power, and then she comes out at 6 resources, is a 2/6 with Restore 3. On attack, you may give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. It is really important to note that when she attacks, she can actually give the experience token to herself for the first swing, making her effectively like a 3/7 leader with Restore 3. That Restore keyword is very powerful in a draft environment because you're just healing so much. And giving things experience tokens with 2 or less power means that we want our deck to be consisted of a lot of things that have 2 or less power without actually like hurting our deck, right? You don't want to like put in a bunch of cards that are really weak just to spend a mana to make them stronger, right? You want to build your deck in such a way that you can, utilize this ability and have stronger plays. So what does that mean to have stronger plays? Well, let's talk about these 2 cards that we really want to look for. I would say we want about 3 to 4 of them in our deck because we really want to open them turn 1, and these are cards that we want to mulligan for. If we don't get them, we'll have some 2-drops that we'll talk about a bit, but let's talk about these 2 cards. First up, we have Moisture Farmer. It is a 0/4 with Restore 2, and then we have Lady Proxima is also a 0/4 that says when you play another Underworld card, you may deal 1 damage to a base. They kind of have both, minor effects, I would say. I think Restore 2 can be very good against a very aggressive plan, but it's coming out early, so I would say these effects are both minor. But where they really shine is that they're both 0/4 stats and only cost 1, which means on the turn you play this card, you can also use Rey's effect, meaning you spent 2 resources for 1/5 stats, which is adds up to 6. And if you guys have noticed, most of the 2-drops usually only add up to 5. They're usually 2 3s or 3 2s. If you guys ever see a 3/3, you're like, wow, it's really good. Like, I want to be playing that turn 1. So that's what we're doing, right? We're turning... We're making use of our resources really well in the beginning of the game, and we're getting 6 total stats. But the best part about that is these things ramp up continuously throughout the game, all the way up to a 3/7 body, which is pretty crazy for just a 1-drop, right? You can reliably keep this alive into the later parts of the game, where maybe you drafted a Mandalorian and can really win the game. I did that actually in one of my pre-releases, and it was fantastic. But even if we don't high roll like that, these cards are going to be very, very strong turn 1 of the game. The reason you don't want, 10 of these cards is because they're pretty bad outside of turn 1. After turn 1, we don't really want to be playing these that much unless we have to. We want to be resource efficient throughout the game. So again, we want about 3 to 4 of them, and we want to mulligan for them. But anytime we see them later in the game, they're going to be an easy resource for us. Next up, we have the 2-drops in our color. These are the 2 cards that I'd say you want to look out for the most. So we have Queel is a 2-costed 2/3 fringe unit with Restore 1. On attack, discard a card from your deck. If it shares an aspect with your base, return it to your hand. And we have Gray Squadron Y-Wing. It is a 2-costed space unit, 1/3. On attack, an opponent chooses a unit or base they control. You may deal 2 damage to it. So the Y-Wing doesn't have great stats, but you can buff it twice with Rey's effect, and it has a crazy ability. While it only looks like it's doing 2 more damage to the base, this thing actually usually sticks around due to Rey's effect through most of the game, and then ends up hitting units in the later parts when they're like, I cannot afford the 2 damage. Queel just says sometimes draw a card and has the Restore 1. And has that 2/3 base. Like, this will go up to 3/4 the next turn and just be carrying you and sticking around for a long time. These are the 2-drops that I would want to look for. There are, of course, other 2-drops in the color and in other colors as well, but these are the 2 that I would say do very well. For 2-drops, you guys probably want around 5. That's probably the sweet spot for 2-drops. If you got less 1-drops, then you want to add 1 to your 2-drop every time. So we'll give, the 1-drops like a 3 to 4 range and the 2-drops a 4 to 6, making our range around 8, 9. I think that's a good range of 2-drops. So get around, if you don't really get any 1-drops, and you're going to want at least 8 2-drops to have a consistent game plan. The really good part about the 2-drops is that we do want to play them on turn 2 of the game, and we don't mind playing them turn 1. Because when we play them turn 2, we have that 1 extra resource to use Ray's ability again, so we're not really being mana inefficient because we're turning, let's say this 2-3 into a 3-4, which is on rate stats. And even though you're like, hey, she's just making things on rate stats, well, that's actually really good. Like, we want to be making things on rate stats. That's how we win the game. Now, there's these other 2-drops that are not that great. We have the Freighter in the middle, we'll talk about in a second, but Rickety Quadjumper and Follower of the Way, these cards are both understated and don't have that strong of an effect. Like, I feel like the Y-Wing has a really strong effect, even though it's understated, but the Rickety Quadjumper has just a whatever effect, but it's an okay 2-drop, and one that gets a lot better with Ray. Like, the best thing about Ray is she's really increasing the quality of all the cards, so, we might not be getting these high-quality 2-drops, but all the 2-drops we get, like Follower of the Way and Rickety Quadjumper, both commons, by the way, will be playable because of Ray. We're making Follower of the Way into a 2-4, but because he says when this unit is upgraded, it gets +1/+1, we're actually increasing him a little bit stronger, right, and moving him all the way to a 3-5, which is actually pretty good stats for a 3-drop. There's a couple 3-5s in the sets, and they're all very good. And then we have Rickety Quadjumper, which has an okay effect, but we're making it a 2-4 and then a 3-7 if it stays alive, and that just makes it a lot better. We put the Freighter on here because this is just a good example, again, of Ray doing Ray things. And, this card is a vanilla, doesn't really do much, is just a 2-5, but actually becoming a 3-6 is really, really good. Like, this card becomes a lot better in a Ray deck, and that's what she does to the cards. She makes a lot more playable cards. So when you're looking at these things with, like, big butts, they got 5 defense, but, like, only 2 attack. You're like, it's not really putting on a lot of pressure, but 3 attack does a lot more, and a 3-6 for only, 4 resources, but 3 now and 1 later is very, very good. Next up, we have the 3-drops. So far we've talked about, the 1 to 2 drops, you want around 8, 9 of them. The 3-drops, we're going to want another similar number to that, probably like 6 to 8, maybe a little less, but the 3-drop slot is actually really strong in this deck because it's, again, if we don't want to buff up our 2-drop, we can just play this on 3 resources. On turn 4, you can also play this card. Sorry, not turn 4. On 4 resources, you can play this card because then we can pump up the last thing. And usually these cards are good enough that if we're playing them on 5 resources, maybe we're only losing 1 point of value. And that's not the end of the world because the 3-drops are actually decent. Like Village Protector. Playing this card for essentially 4 resources isn't the worst thing in the world because its effect is so strong, right? So these are the 3-drops that I think we're really going to look for in your draft. So we have Village Protector, Concord Dawn, I know covering the names, Protector of something, Tech, and then this Wookiee over here. All of these cards have decent stats or decent effects. I would think Sentinel is very important with Ray because when she comes out, she's very tanky and actually doesn't die to many things in forms of removal in this format. So if you can put Sentinels in front of her, she becomes very strong. While the Protector only has Sentinel when it's upgraded, it's going to be upgraded because it only has 2 attack and Ray's going to make it bigger. So you're going to look for like a healthy amount of these 3-drops in your deck, again, around 6 to 8. And, if we do the top end for both, we're on like 16, 17 cards already, and that are only our 1, 2, and 3 drops, which really prioritize making sure that we have plays in the early stages of the game. You guys do not need as many big things as you guys think in a draft format. Even if you guys want to play something on turn 5, 6, on resource 5, 6, 7, 8, that could only be like 4 cards of your deck. Like on 6 resources, you've seen a lot of cards in your deck, almost, I think, over half of it. So, we could do the math real fast. You start the game with 6 cards, and then 6 resources would be 4 turns later, 8 more cards. So there you go, 14 cards, about half the deck. If you had any draw, would be half the deck, right? So you've seen like half your deck, so you don't need that many big things, but you do want to make sure we're playing something very small. Because if you guys have played, especially even in Constructed, if you guys are missing a turn, like you get really behind really fast. I rather play, a little resource inefficient in the later parts of the game where it doesn't matter as much. To be resource efficient in the early parts of the game. Next up, I'm going to just highlight some other good blue cards that I guys want you to keep out for. Rose Tico is probably just one of the most insane cards in all of the set, especially in pre-release. Like, she's just so big. the odds of them, answering her right away are nil. They probably usually have to trade something inefficiently just to get rid of her shield so she doesn't get her effect off. And if she does get her effect, she's a 4/8. Like, that's insane. And if you buff her with Ray before she attacks, well, now she's a 5/9. And that's a 4-cost 5/9. That's never dying ever. All right, Vigilant Pursuit Craft is just one of these cards I also want to highlight. It has the Smuggle keyword, it has Sentinel. This is a very good card, in my opinion, to get multiples of and to get cards similar to it because it has Smuggle. These are cards that you don't mind putting in your resource. Again, I don't mind paying 7 for a 3/5 when it comes out of my resource pool, meaning it's practically a free card, doesn't cost something from my hand, right? I'm getting a card for free by playing this from my Smuggle. So you guys want a good amount of Smuggle cards. I'd say, is really as many as you can take without going under the other numbers, because you can just resource them and they're going to feel really good in the later parts of the game. Another example of a pretty strong card that you guys want to pick up is Gentle Giant. It is a common, so you have a good chance of seeing it. If I move to the side, we can read it real fast. It has Grit. On attack, you may heal damage from another unit equal to the damage on this unit. It actually synergizes pretty good with Ray, helps keep things alive. It has going to have a lot of attack because it has Grit, and with Ray, you can make it one bigger. A 3/9 with Grit. Sometimes just totally steals the game. Like, this thing is just going to punch your opponent in the face and deal a lot of damage. So when you guys are drafting Ray, keep an eye out for these cards. They are very good as more of your top end in your deck. Some removal. When we're playing blue and draft especially, we really want removal. Removal is a premium. We don't want infinite amounts of removal, but we do want a healthy amount. I could say if I could grab 2 copies of each of these cards somehow, I would, bringing up another 6 cards of our deck. So now we have 8 slots left, and, maybe we have like 2 of each of those, and then, we just have a couple other cards. And that's like in some dream scenario, right, guys? You're probably never going to see 2 copies of each of these cards, especially Chewbacca. It is a rare. But, and we're really only talking about one color right now, but we're just trying to really focus, on the color that we're guaranteed to play. We're going to talk about the other colors that we can draft in just a second. But Fell the Dragon, Rival's Fall, and Chewbacca are all really good removal spells. Fell the Dragon is a little bit more niche, so you probably will end up resourcing this card a lot in the early parts of the game. But if you know your opponent plays big things, especially in Game 2, this thing can really steal a game. It's another reason why upgrades are really bad, because your opponent can put, a high-costed upgrade like the Darksaber on their card, and you play Fell the Dragon, you 2-for-1 them, and they want to die, right? Chewbacca is just this monster. Obviously, it has more than 2 attack, but it comes in, defeats a unit, and has crazy stats with Grit. It also has Smuggle, even though it's a red resource. We're going to talk about how good red is in just a minute. So here it is, red. If you guys are looking for a secondary color in draft in general, I'd say red is probably one of the best ones, if not the best secondary color. Especially for Ray, I'm going to go out and say that this is the color that you guys want to go towards. So we have 2 good removal spells in Daring Raid and Detention Block Rescue. There are going to be some capture themes involved, and Detention Block Rescue will really trade up sometimes if they captured one of your cards. Daring Raid is just a solid card, though. It only costs 1, and it deals 2 damage to anything, including bases, so sometimes this can just sneak wins. But 1 resource to deal 2 is very good at finishing things off. I would say Detention Block dealing 3 is like, 1 below Open Fire, so it's 1 below Rate that we've seen before, but, it has that upside of doing the captured units. I also want to point out other red cards that just feel really strong. They don't necessarily go with Ray, so I don't want you guys to just look for 2-cost things or 2-attack things. But IG-11 and Clan Challengers are very, very strong cards. Man, I really liked Clan Challenger. I felt like that 6 defense just survived enough, and it having Overwhelm, and sometimes, of course, and when it attacks, it does 6. It's just, it's a pretty nasty card. I really do like both these cards, swinging for 6 and having 6 defense, and the other card being a 6/5 that sometimes, does damage to ground units. These are very powerful cards, and in blue in general, there's actually kind of a lack of good 5-drops, so unless you draft Ray the Legendary, but there's a lack of good 5-drops, and I think red really fills those holes. Clan Challengers is a common. You guys will definitely see this when you're drafting, and I don't know how much of a priority people have on it, but this is actually a really good Ray card. So pick up the Clan Challengers. It's really good at killing leaders too. If you play the Mirror and you're able to play Clan Challengers before your opponent plays Ray, you might just be able to one-shot their Ray, and meaning you're preventing their Ray from coming out. This card is very, very good and hard to deal with. Some other good red cards that we want to look for are Housecast Soldier and Heroic Renegade. They're both 2-drops, so they can help you fill out that 2-drop curve, because it might be hard, to find that 8-ish number of 1 to 2 drops. So the Heroic Renegade will really, and Housecast Soldier will help you, fill those numbers up. These guys also both have decent effects with Saboteur and Grit. Obviously, Grit being probably a little stronger, but the Saboteur is pretty good, when you play against other things with shields and such. So there is that. And yeah, guys, that is all the cards that I really want to talk about. We're going to maybe talk about some other general, draft things real fast. I would say that, in terms, if you guys really want to play blue, I would probably always play Rey over Finn. Finn is very niche and hard to build around, really requires specific things, where Rey is very general. And if you guys are looking for these, 1 and 2 drop cards, they're going to be easy to find and easy to get. So, look for those. I would say you can also pair Rey with other colors. I think probably her second best color pair is going to be yellow. I don't really like the green synergy with Rey in the set, but you could pair any color with Rey, especially if you're focusing on the blue cards. If we did our math earlier, if you guys are paying attention to the numbers, it's really easy to get most of the cards you need in blue. So there's that. But yeah, red is a great secondary color. And yeah, guys, I think that's all I got. If you guys want a general rating on Rey, I would say she's one of the better draft leaders. I think you can easily 3-0 a pod with Rey. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know. If you have any more questions on how to draft Rey, maybe I forgot to mention something, please let me know in the comments below. But again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, peace.